Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we're going to talk about one of the most catastrophic events that happened in Batavia's history, and one that involves the body of water that runs through the Tonawanda Creek. So the event we're going to discuss happened 80 years ago in the spring of 1942, and it was actually the worst flood that ever happened in Batavia's history, where the creek actually reached its highest level ever, over 14 feet, and it has never since reached that and had not reached that previously. So it left nearly half the city underwater and left thousands of dollars of damage, and people were homeless for some time actually in the affected areas. So we're going to go through what actually happened during that event, and I'll show you some pictures that were taken during it so you can see just the extent of the water back in March of 1942. Batavia has seen many high floodwaters in its history. In 1887, there was a flood called at the time the greatest flood Batavia has seen in years, and in 1902, the waters damaged the Walnut Street Bridge in what was called a record breaker, and even the flood of 1959 caused considerable hardship. However, in March 1942, it would see its greatest flood in its history. That March, there was still a good deal of snow on the ground in the city. In typical Western New York fashion, a large snowstorm came through on March 15th, which added to the white coverage. Yet, on the following day, the temperatures rose quickly and the snow changed to rain. The precipitation caused much of the snowdrifts to begin to melt, especially in the hills near Attica and along the tributaries of the Tonawanda Creek. The creek soon flooded as water poured from Alexander and filled the low areas that bordered the creek. One particular area that was hit hard were the streets south of Ellicott Street in Batavia. Water filled streets like Jackson, Swan, Hutchins, and Otis. As the water flowed under the Walnut Street Bridge, then still open to vehicular traffic, it spread to West Main Street and to the northern side streets. Many of the residents of those streets were forced to evacuate their homes as the waters continued to rise. Many sought out friends or relatives living in higher points in the city. The Red Cross had to step in to assist and help 225 families find safe and dry lodgings. Those without another place to go were given shelter at the YMCA and school buildings that were still unaffected. The only effective means of travel along many of the streets of Batavia during those few days, looking more like the canals of Venice, were boats and canoes and other forms of watercraft. Most homes had cellars full of water, and in some worst cases, the waters even reached the first floors of the dwellings. The people living in the flooded areas could not return home for several days, but when they did return, they were met with severe damage to their homes and properties. In the end, the Tonawanda Creek crested at 14.5 feet, the highest in its history, and in total, nearly $500,000 in damage was caused. This flood, among others, caused the city to strongly look towards how to better manage the waters of the Tonawanda to prevent something similar from happening in the future. Flood control improvements were authorized in 1948 with the Flood Control Act passed by Congress. The improvements were completed by late 1955, and this included widening the creek to upwards of 100 feet, addition of a retaining wall within the city limits, clearing of the channel, extra bank protection in susceptible areas, and the improvement of existing drainage systems. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Artifact video series and learned a little bit more about the history of water management here in Batavia and the control of the Tonawanda Creek, as in the past it could overflow very quickly and cause a lot of damage to the city, but now, thankfully, precautions have been made, and we haven't had an incident like that in a very long time. But in case you've missed any of our previous videos, be sure to go check them out on our YouTube channel, Holland Office Museum, and you can check out the playlist Artifact video series and go back through nearly 90 videos worth of information. And if you enjoy anything particularly, give it a like and possibly even subscribe to the channel, as it helps us out a little bit, but also gets you notified quicker when we do release new videos. But as always, the best way to learn more about the events and artifacts and people that we talk about in those videos is to stop by the museum yourself, and we'll be happy to talk to you and share even more information besides what we include here. So as always, enjoy, and we hope to see you at the museum.